Star Trek's animated comedy has a perfect way to jump to live action Star Trek. Lower Decks has a perfect way to jump to live action if Tawny Newsome's Star Trek comedy happens. Star Trek Lower Decks Season 5 is the final season on Paramount Plus, and it's unclear what's next for Newsome's LT. Beckett Mariner, Jack Quaid's LT Brad Boimler, and their fellow Lower Deckers on the USS Cerritos. Star Trek Lower Decks creator Mike McMahon hinted that his animated comedy's finale will close a chapter on the Lower Deckers' lives. Perhaps Tawny Newsome can help determine what's next. Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid were able to portray Mariner and Boimler in live action in Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2's acclaimed comedic crossover. Even though Newsome is saying goodbye to voicing Mariner on Star Trek Lower Decks, she has become a creative force behind the scenes for Star Trek. Star Trek executive producer Alex Kurtzman praised Newsome as a stone-cold assassin as a writer and brought Tawny into the writer's room of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. From that success, Newsome and Justin Simien began developing Star Trek's first live-action workplace comedy, which was announced at San Diego Comic-Con. Tawny Newsome's Star Trek comedy can bring Lower Decks to live action. Tawny Newsome's live-action Star Trek comedy could be where she and her Star Trek Lower Decks castmates revive their characters, but this time in the flesh. In an interview with Cinema Blend, Newsome affirmed that her in-development Star Trek comedy is set in Star Trek Picard's 25th century era by design, so that characters from Lower Decks and Picard can potentially appear and be roughly the appropriate ages of the characters who play them. Check out Tawny's quote below. I always want to work with my friends. So yes, without being able to like, there's not even anything to spoil. I can definitely say that part of my and Justin's idea for setting it in the 25th century was so that everybody that we've come to love in the franchise, like everyone, in the Picard era, all of our friends here from Lower Decks, the possibility is definitely there. That was why I was like, this is the time period I want so that we don't have to de-age Jonathan Frakes' face laughs. Let everybody kind of be vaguely the ages they are. We have nothing actually planned, so this isn't a spoiler, but that was definitely the promise of setting it in that time period. Star Trek Picard Season 3 ended in 2402, and Tawny Newsome and Justin Simien's Star Trek comedy is set afterward or around that same time frame. Their in-development comedy is reportedly a workplace comedy set on a pleasure planet, which opens the door for all manner of Star Trek characters to appear, perhaps looking for shore leave. But it also sounds like creating a means for Star Trek Lower Decks cast to reprise their characters in live action was part of Newsome's design. Although the Lower Deckers would be roughly 20 years older in Picard's 25th century, Jack Quaid, Noel Wells, and Eugene Cordero have already told Screen Rant they'd love to play their Lower Deckers in live action. Since its inception in the 1960s, Star Trek has evolved into a diverse multimedia franchise, spanning various TV series, films, books, and more. Each iteration builds upon the foundation of Gene Roddenberry's optimistic vision of the future. However, one of the more surprising and creative expansions of the Star Trek universe has come in the form of animated comedy Star Trek Lower Decks 2019. Created by Mike McMahon, Lower Decks offers a refreshingly humorous take on the often serious and cerebral franchise, focusing on the junior officers aboard the USS Cerritos. While fans initially questioned how well comedy would work in a universe known for its drama and philosophical explorations, Lower Decks has been widely praised for its irreverent yet affectionate humor. But the success of Lower Decks raises a tantalizing question. Can a show so rooted in animation and comedy make the leap to live action? In fact, the series might have the perfect setup to do just that, allowing for a seamless transition while still maintaining its unique voice and humor. Here's how Star Trek Lower Decks could make that jump and why it would be a perfect fit for live-action Star Trek. The characters are primed for live action. One of the most compelling reasons Lower Decks could work in live action is its characters. The crew of the USS Cerritos, led by the rebellious but dedicated Ensign Beckett Mariner, voiced by Tawny Newsome, and the by-the-book Ensign Brad Boimler, voiced by Jack Quaid, are dynamic, well-drawn personalities that already feel three-dimensional. They are complex enough to exist outside the animated format, with backstories, aspirations, and interpersonal relationships that transcend the comedic lens of the show. In fact, two Lower Decks characters have already made the transition to live action in a Season 2 crossover episode of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. This crossover not only worked but was widely embraced by fans, proving that the animated characters could retain their charm, humor, and depth in a live-action setting. Newsom and Quaid reprised their roles as Mariner and Boimler, demonstrating how easily their animated personas could translate. Both actors have the comedic timing and dramatic chops to bring their characters to life, ensuring that the shift from animation to live action would not feel forced or out of place. A multiverse or holodeck storyline, one of the easiest ways for Lower Decks to shift into live action would be through the use of established Star Trek technology like the holodeck or the concept of parallel universes. Star Trek is no stranger to exploring alternate realities, mirror universes, or even time travel. These plot devices offer a wealth of narrative opportunities to bring animated characters into the live-action realm. A holodeck malfunction or some kind of transporter accident could cause the crew of the Cerritos to find themselves transformed into live-action versions of themselves. Alternatively, they could discover a parallel universe where they exist as live-action counterparts. This type of storyline would not only fit within the established Star Trek canon, but it would also offer a meta-narrative about the differences between animation and live action, something Lower Decks has proven adept at handling through its many tongue-in-cheek references to Star Trek, tropes, and history. A multiverse plot could allow for the blending of tones between Lower Decks and other Star Trek series, offering moments of serious drama interspersed with the humor Lower Decks is known for. By playing with different styles and genres, the show could lean into its comedic roots while also offering the higher stakes and visual spectacle expected of live-action Star Trek. Maintaining the humor in live action, the biggest challenge in transitioning Lower Decks to live action is preserving the show's irreverent humor without losing the seriousness of the wider Star Trek universe. While Star Trek is no stranger to humor, episodes like The Trouble with Tribbles or Cupid come to mind, Lower Decks has a distinct comedic style that pokes fun at Star Trek conventions while still honoring them. In live action, the humor could be maintained by leaning into physical comedy and the awkwardness of characters like Boimler adjusting to the more serious live-action universe. Boimler, with his neurotic obsession with Starfleet protocols, would be the perfect foil for the more serious captains and officers of other live-action series, creating natural comedic tension. Mariner's irreverence would similarly translate well, as her rebellious attitude clashes with the formality of a live-action Starfleet. Additionally, live-action Lower Decks could experiment with breaking the fourth wall in subtle ways, acknowledging its own transition from animation. This kind of meta-humor is already a hallmark of the show and could create a fresh, innovative approach within live-action Star Trek. A visual upgrade. One of the strengths of Lower Decks is its vibrant and exaggerated animated style, which allows for visual jokes, hyperbolic action sequences, and imaginative alien designs. In live action, this style could be adapted into a more cinematic format, offering a visual upgrade while still maintaining the fun and adventurous spirit of the animated series. The live-action sets and costumes could evoke the bold colors and sleek designs of classic Star Trek, blending the aesthetic of the animated show with the more polished look of modern live-action Star Trek series.